Hello, friends, and welcome. It's the third Sunday of Advent, Gaudete Sunday, which means joy. So we light the pink candle today, and I thought I would join you all today by sharing a part of my life and my faith that has brought me into this limitless wellspring of joy. That no matter what is happening in the world, or like the horizontal axis of life, I have this like vertical dimension that anchors my heart and genuinely keeps filling it with joy and peace and goodness. And so, in my understanding, that comes from Jesus. But a way I have learned to access it and the way that I returned home to that love and that stability and that joy is through Mary. As you can see, lots of references to Mary in my office. And Mary is a wonderful wisdom teacher for all of us, especially in this season of Advent, as we're in this time of yearning, this time of longing, this time of desiring to follow and to love Jesus. The best guide that we can have for that, a woman who was human, who was made as we are made, is Mother Mary, is the woman who nurtured and grew him in her womb, that at one point in time, her blood was his blood. So when we pray for the blood of Jesus to bless our lives, there's an intrinsic link with the blood of Mary and the milk from her bosom. I heard recently this exquisite analogy of the Eucharist, of how the Eucharist is like body and blood that turns to food. And where else could Christ have learned that from but from his mother? When the blood of a woman's body turns to milk and nourishes her children. So that is like a direct transmission of what Jesus was receiving as a child, body into food. And that's what he offers us in the Eucharist. And indeed, the wonderful mystic Julian of Norwich even referred to Christ as a mother, that who else could offer themselves in such a self-giving manner, if not for the heart of the mother? Now, I think, of course, Christ did come in the body of a man. And as Cynthia Bourgeault speaks to sometimes, his ministry was very feminine in the sense that it was this incarnal being in the body, descending down into matter, being with the sick, being with the poor, practices and ways of serving that would have been traditionally a more feminine way or a way that women would have done. And of course, he also had the very unique element of his ministry where he had women in the community of people that were traveling with him, which would have been very radical in the Jewish community of the day. And even the censuses at the time wouldn't have counted women, they counted just the men. So, like in the miracle of the loaves and the fishes when Jesus feeds the 5,000, counted, that would have been 5,000 men, and it wouldn't have counted the women and the children that were also there. So we might even imagine that that miracle was up to 10,000 people that were fed in that moment. So in my own life, it has been praying the rosary that has really brought me back to this heart of Christ. And the rosary continues to be a really deep wellspring of joy and resource in my life. And earlier this week, we had the Feast of the Immaculate Conception of Mary. And we've come to a point in time where a lot of people just believe that the Immaculate Conception is, maybe a myth or a story or an analogy. I do really believe and have faith that it really happened. And there's actually even recently been some very interesting research on mice where there has been this like conception through light. And even when we look at other moments in this, infamous story that we're working with of alchemy, really, of Christ alchemizing a lot of the pain and the suffering in the world with his death on the cross and his resurrection into mercy, peace, forgiveness. That process of a physical body, so after the resurrection, when he ascends up back up into heaven, body and soul. And we also hear this of Mary happening at the end of her life, that there's no place that she's buried, but that her body is brought up, body and soul. And the way I've come to understand this is that, as I was speaking to last week, like the fabric of our reality is light. We live in a vibratory dimension where love and light, in their most tangible, real, non-fluffy, non-woo dimensions, but the actual like substance of love that intertwines all of life, and the light that exists at the heart of all being. They're like the two fabrics of reality. And we live in a world of matter. Some might say a fallen world, like a world of density. And I've come to believe and have heard it taught that, part of our act of faith is like that through the human heart, we learn to bring love deeper into the reality of matter than it has been before. That we're actually all called to be mothers of Christ. We're all called to birth the holy through our being. So, and in that process, it's a process of bringing more love and more light through the fabric of our being that it might radiate out into the world. And I believe that Mary and Jesus reached such a high level of this that the level of light in them actually pervaded their bodily substance, and that's part of how they could ascend. So obviously this whole realm is a mystery and I might be way off, but I do have found great I suppose belief that has then really deepened my faith in really reclaiming this understanding of the resurrection and the ascension and Mary crowned Queen of Angels, and not just seeing them as metaphors or not just seeing them as like stories that have other meanings. And I think in our secular, rational society, that has happened a lot. We've like diminished the power of God to something that can simply be rationally explained. And while I'm speaking maybe to a little bit of the light alchemy that I believe happened, like there's so many dimensions of that mystery that we can never understand. And that's part of where our requirement for faith comes in, as we spoke to a little bit last week on like the bright darkness, and how when we're in the darkness and when we're in the mystery, that's when we need our faith. And I believe these stories are the most immaculate and immense stories in the human pantheon of stories that really help us access a level of faith that really can heal us, that really can change the world around us, not through our doing, but through our agreement with God's will and through our belief in the truth that love has won. That when Jesus died on the cross, that was him stating a truth that love had won, and we never need to be afraid of any darkness or any evil, which are different things, because we can trust that love has won. So Mary is a really incredible guide on this journey, because Mary teaches us how to be with the mystery and how to be so open to the will of God that we too can learn to like conceive his will, that as Maester Eckhart says, we're all called to be mothers of God. And then through us, we can birth more of Christ in the world through our service, through, as Saint Teresa of Avila would say, through being the hands and feet of Christ on earth. Christ has no hands or feet on earth anymore except ours. It's like he's in a different dimension and we can relate to him and we can work with him. And certainly God's will can, make miracles happen. But so much of the daily practice of loving, the daily practice of birthing Christ is in our responsibility, is in our jurisdiction as humans, and it's part of our role. The fact that we can contemplate these things, the fact that we can pray, the fact that we can even contemplate a creator behind all the being that we see in the world puts humanity in this unique role And it's not that we're, you know, above or that we're here to dominate everything, but we do have a significant responsibility that we're tasked with to help with this um, process of bringing more love into the world. And Mary is the most wonderful guide for this. In the Gospel of Luke, there is the Magnificat, which is like Mary's song of, it gives us a window into the insight of the type of woman that she was, that she could receive this prophecy, that she would receive this child, that she would conceive without laying with a man and be pregnant in a time where that would have been, as shameful and judged as it would have been in Ireland just 50 years ago. Um, and yet she had the courage to surrender herself to that will of God and to receive that, which is just immense, and to become this mother of Christ who would be with him through all the seasons of his life, right up to his crucifixion and death. She stayed watching as he died and, preparing his body after for burial. And then again, in the days after, like at Pentecost, when he, or in the days after, the 40 days after, when he was resurrected and present, and then again at Pentecost when his spirit comes in. So she's a key figure throughout the whole of his life, and she can teach us so much. And through Mary, we can come to know the heart of Christ so much more intimately. So Mary's song of praise gives us a really good window into how we can position our souls to be active collaborators with God, where, like in the gospel or in the parable of the seeds that are sown, some seeds are sown on the stone and they don't grow, some are pecked up by birds, some are suffocated by brambles and they don't grow. Other seeds grow on good soil and they produce hundreds and thousands of seeds. Their fruit is manifold. It's not just that there's an equivalent of like a good work for like an equally good payback. It's that when we can really be fertile soil for the will of love to move through our being, we can produce fruit that is unimaginable. And in a world where many people, are feeling intense anxiety about the state of the world, or a lot of fear, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, worry, and feeling like we're in the end times, we really need more and more people to be so strong in their faith and so humble in their desire to really serve God's will, not their own desire for their life, which is not an easy path, but to really lay down their life to serve what the will of love is. And that's a challenge for the human ego. And that's why Mary is such a valuable and wonderful teacher for us. And it's why my relationship with her has brought me so much joy, because she has walked me through so many deaths and resurrections in my own being. She has helped me have the courage to not shy away or to not take the easier path or to shirk it off. And that's not to say that I don't do those things, and I have done those things many, many times. But for me, coming back, and particularly in prayer with the Rosary, or simply in contemplation with Mary, it has helped me have the courage to walk through these initiations of love, which are not easy things to engage with. And by no means do I think that's done. I think it's a forever process. And I think it's a process we're all called to. So I'm going to read Mary's Song of Praise. And the title itself says a lot, because it's like the Song of Praise. More of it is just about praising God. That's the focus, is how do we keep turning ourselves back to the creator of all things? How do we keep turning ourselves back to the love at the heart of all things, bringing our honor, bringing our gratitude, bringing our devotion? And as I was speaking to, I think 2 weeks ago, the toroidal field of the heart, it is that process where we keep coming back to look at the face of our Maker, to keep coming back and bringing glory to the creator of all things. It creates such a magnetic presence in us as humans. And that's where we can really begin to leverage the power of love. And it's not that it's through our works, it's through God's grace, but we do get to be active collaborators with that. And, you know, yeah, like no one is coming to save us, even if we might feel that Christ saves us, and in one dimension that's true. But in the world, like we're all called to birth Christ. We're all called to be active participants. We're all called to be in this like dynamic drama of life and engage wholeheartedly and be courageous and change the things we can change, make peace with the things that we can't, but to keep trying to show up as love. And it's so easy for a human heart to get encrusted by bitterness and contempt and resentment and exhaustion and worry and fear. And so this is like an eternal process. And Mary is such a wonderful teacher, as I've said now many times. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. For he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely from now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name." So you can see there, it's all about how can her soul be a magnifying glass for God, that saving grace comes through her being and is in her. And that's part of what can like sustain a person through great suffering or through great, help them persevere through great sorrow in their lives. And so you can see here multiple times she's just saying, like, God has done great things and I am blessed, but it's God that is blessing me. God is the great one. Creator is the great one. His mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. And the fear of the Lord is, we can match it with almost with this state of awe, of just being in awe of the vast, all-consuming light that is God, that is at the heart of all matter. This love and light that really does have jurisdiction and sovereign like power over all things. And he has gifted people with free will. And in that case, he doesn't intercede, but there is a depth of his power that pervades all of life. And the fear of the Lord is what happens to the human soul when we really come into that feeling of that awe, the terror of the like, oh my goodness, it's so vast. So she says, and it's his mercy that comes, that we might fear that terror, feel that terror or that awe, but God is merciful and we're not like obliterated in the light and we're not, smushed because we're so tiny, but that our God is a loving God that will continue to love and uplift us and bring us into this great dance of creation. So it's like such a beautiful synergy of humanity and God. And I feel like obviously all the trees, all the plants, all the animals, all the species, every being is part of this great dance. But what makes humans different is that we have free will. We have the choice to turn away from that knowing, whereas a tree is constantly singing the hymn of the heavens, just in its very beingness. A dog intimately remembers that truth of life. Even children and babies, we see that in them. It is something unique about the human ego, the human persona, the human will, that we have the freedom to turn our backs on that or to turn towards it. And that's the process that makes us such significant contributors. And while in many ways we can see how when we turn our back, there can be so much desecration in the earth and how we live here, it also speaks then to the power that we have when we do really turn back to really honor the heart of love and really live in harmony with that. The good we can do is also immeasurable. And it's not that we try to do good, we just listen to God and we follow the path that God lays out, which often will be difficult or hard or challenging or not what we want or not what we prefer. But in our heart of hearts, we know that that's the next right step and we're called to like follow that, which is a challenge. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in their thoughts of in the thoughts of their hearts. So he has scattered the proud. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. Here it's just speaking to how much, pride, arrogance, self grandiosity, or being filled with ourselves, to want to be rich of the things of the world, that like that is not the pathway of God. It's not to say that sometimes people aren't put into positions of power or have great riches. Like we could just look at King David or King Solomon. That's just an ebb and flow of life. But we're called to never put those things above God. And that's obviously where we can see a lot of the harm that is in our earth in today's day and age, is when people put that ahead of their love of love. And in that, he lifts the lowly. He, like in the reverse of the proud, he blesses the humble, and he feeds the hungry with good things. So being hungry for God is a gift. Like that's where we know we will be sated, to be hungry for love. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, according to the promises he made to our ancestors, to Abraham and to the descendants forever. This, when it speaks of the promises, I mean, the Bible is the book of promises. And I think I showed you 2 or 3 weeks ago this infographic Bible of like how many prophecies were made in the Bible that came true. And that ultimate promise is that love has won, and that Jesus Christ, Mary's son, is the ultimate incarnation of the proof that love has won. And his merciful act on the cross and his resurrection is helping humanity come into deeper coherence with that love. And in many ways, this love is so vast and so incomprehensible and so difficult for our souls to really understand. Like, we're not called to understand, and that's why we need faith. But it's so vast that our egos really, really struggle. Our small selves really, really struggle. And in so many ways, it's the path of parenthood, of learning to be self-sacrificing in our love, to give ourselves up for something that's greater, for like a legacy of love, to let our bodies, if you're women, be given up for children, and to be, the way parents give up so much of their self as service. And obviously we also see this in the vocations, and it's part of why many religious people are called father or mother or sister. There's this like familial love of self-giving, that is a real marker of Christ. And so in that, we can learn so much from the mother who nurtured him. And so Mary is a great source of joy in my life. And I hope that some of this has given you some food for thought. I don't expect you to agree with everything I've said, but I hope it does facilitate some interesting discussion and contemplation. Praying the rosary is a really remarkable practice. I think I will speak more to that next week, as we are in the quiet time of the solstice and of the winter season. And so for now, I will leave it there. God bless you, and looking forward to seeing you soon.